Today's episode, Steve Jobs, a man who combined the ego of a Roman emperor with the emotional stability of a Windows 95 update. He didn't just build products, he built cults. He didn't just sell technology, he sold identity. And somehow convinced millions that paying $1,200 for a rectangle made them creative. By the end of this episode, you'll either hate him, worship him, or both, which, coincidentally, is exactly what he wanted. Born in 1955 in San Francisco, California. Shocker! Another gifted child of the post-war boom, raised in a garage, destined to think he's special. Steve was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, two ordinary people who, unfortunately, raised a human paradox. His biological parents were academics, which explains the intelligence. His adoptive parents were mechanics, which explains why he thought he could build God. As a kid, Jobs was bright, bored, and unbearable. Teachers described him as difficult, which is educator speak for smart enough to be dangerous. He once covered his teacher's desk with explosive caps just to see what would happen. Spoiler, chaos. But at least he was consistent. He grew up near Silicon Valley, back when Silicon Valley meant a bunch of nerds in garages soldering dreams together. Steve was one of them. He hung around engineers, snuck into Hewlett-Packard meetings, and made phone-freaking devices to scam free long-distance calls. Ah yes, the great moral foundation of a future billionaire, fraud. Then came high school and a fateful meeting with Steve Wozniak, the lovable tech wizard who could actually build things. Together, they were the perfect pair. Woz was logic, Jobs was delusion. One created, the other manipulated. One loved engineering, the other loved control. They started small, selling illegal blue boxes that hacked the phone system, because nothing says future tech visionary like organized telecom crime. Jobs later said it taught him that small teams can change the world. Right. Especially if they start by committing felonies. After dropping out of Reed College, because, obviously, he wandered through India searching for enlightenment. He came back barefoot, Buddhist, and broke, declaring he wanted to see things differently. The real translation, unemployed. But those few years shaped his worldview. Minimalism, design, and the illusion of spiritual depth, which he later monetized brilliantly. Imagine, a man who went to India to reject materialism and then came back to invent the iPhone. Humanity never disappoints. By the late 1970s, Jobs was ready to build something bigger, something that would fuse his obsession with beauty, his hunger for control, and his allergy to humility. He just needed one thing, a garage, and a friend who didn't realize he was about to be emotionally destroyed for the next decade. And that's where it begins, the cult of Apple. Ah yes, the birth of Apple, otherwise known as How to Turn Two Nerds in a Garage into an Ego Death Match. It's 1976. Woz builds a computer. Jobs looks at it and says, "That's cool, let's sell it." Because why build something when you can brand it? They call it the Apple One. No market research, no business plan, just two guys and a garage. America's most over-romanticized startup cliche. And of course, it worked. Because luck loves lunatics. Jobs somehow convinces a local computer store to buy 50 units. Woz assembles them. Jobs pockets the glory. The perfect ecosystem. It's the first time in history a man marketed someone else's work so aggressively that people forgot the someone else existed. But it was the Apple II that made them legends. Bright colors, plastic casing, user-friendly interface. It was the anti-computer computer, and it sold like enlightenment in Silicon Valley. By age 25, Jobs was worth over $200 million. 25. I was still trying to explain to people why time isn't linear. He was explaining why beige isn't actually a color. Then came the Macintosh, a machine with an interface so simple even humans could use it. It launched in 1984 with that Orwellian ad, ironic considering Jobs himself would later become the Big Brother figure he warned about. Still, it was a masterpiece. The design, the message, the drama. Jobs had turned computers into status symbols. Technology became fashion, function became feeling, and Apple became religion. He said, "People don't know what they want until you show it to them." I'd call that arrogance, if he hadn't been completely right. The man's genius wasn't invention, it was perception. He could see what people would worship next. He didn't sell technology, he sold taste. Not computers, confidence. Every keynote was a sermon, every product launch a resurrection. He wore black turtlenecks like a true monk of modernism. He didn't have employees, he had disciples. But then, inevitably, reality showed up. Jobs was brilliant, but insufferable. He screamed at designers, berated engineers, and treated meetings like episodes of Maury. He wanted perfection, and anything less was treason. So in 1985, Apple's board did the unthinkable. They fired him. Imagine being so unbearable that a company named after temptation itself decided you were too toxic. He was 30 years old, publicly humiliated, and suddenly human again. And like all fallen prophets, he had two choices: disappear or reinvent himself. Guess which one he picked.
Here's the thing about Steve Jobs. He didn't just get fired. He got mythologized by failure. Most people get laid off and start day drinking. Jobs started next and bought Pixar. Because apparently the correct emotional response to rejection is found two new industries. Next was his rebound relationship with technology. Overdesigned, overpriced, underappreciated. Basically, a $10,000 breakup letter to Apple. But hidden in that shiny black cube was the software that would eventually power future Macs. So even his mistakes aged well. Infuriating. Then there was Pixar. He buys it for $5 million from George Lucas. Yes, that George Lucas, who sold it to pay off his divorce. Jobs turns it into an animation studio that redefines storytelling forever. Toy Story hits theaters in 1995, and suddenly, Jobs is the digital Walt Disney. Because why stop at changing computers when you can reprogram childhood too? He didn't make toys talk. He made capitalism adorable.
Now, let's talk psychology. Jobs was driven by something deeper than money or fame. He was addicted to control. Every pixel, every screw, every corner of every product had to be perfect, or else. He once told an engineer, "Real artists ship." Translation, you better do the impossible faster. He built Apple like a monastery of aesthetics. Design was scripture. Simplicity was salvation. He believed technology should feel inevitable, like it always existed, and you were just too dumb to notice. Humans love to mistake tyranny for vision, which should come to no surprise, given our last videos. But here's the paradox. His obsession with beauty did elevate technology. The man turned hardware into art. He made machines feel alive. The iMac wasn't just a computer, it was personality, wrapped in plastic. By the late 90s, Apple was collapsing without him. So naturally, they called the man they once exiled because apparently divine punishment only lasts until the stock drops. In 1997, he returned, older, sharper, and somehow even more intimidating. He cut half the product line, fired hundreds of employees, and rebuilt the company from the ashes, like a minimalist phoenix in a black turtleneck. I'll give him this. He didn't just save Apple, he redefined it. He brought clarity to chaos. He made simplicity powerful, and he did it with the same ferocity most people reserve for religious wars. But underneath the Zen quotes and smooth keynotes was a man who lived on extremes, a perfectionist who couldn't live with imperfection, a visionary who couldn't coexist with people, a genius constantly trying to bend the universe to his will. Trust me, I get it. But then came the second coming, the iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, the ICUP. The everything. Jobs didn't just return to Apple. He turned it into the world's first digital empire of desire.
Fast forward to the 2000s.
Apple becomes unstoppable. The iMac made computers sexy. The iPod made music portable again. The iPhone made people stop looking at each other forever. He said he was putting 1,000 songs in your pocket. He forgot to mention he was also putting a Coke-level addiction in your hand. Under Jobs, Apple didn't just make products, it made behavioral chains. You didn't use an iPhone, you belonged to your iPhone. And when something owns your attention, it owns you. He built that with intention. The man was a master manipulator of human desire, obsessed with elegance, obsessed with control, and obsessed with the illusion of freedom. You thought you were customizing your life. You were actually being curated. But even titans decay. In 2003, Jobs was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He delayed treatment for 9 months, convinced he could outthink biology. Because of course, after conquering design and markets, why not challenge mortality too? Turns out, even the reality distortion field can't rewrite DNA.
As his body failed, his empire soared.
2007, the iPhone, a single object that changed everything. It killed maps, cameras, alarm clocks, human attention spans, and eye contact, all in one keynote. He stood on stage, thinner, weaker, but still radiating control. He introduced it not like a man showing a product, but like a prophet, unveiling a new commandment, and the world bowed. He didn't just predict the future, he authored it. Every swipe, every ping, every screen addiction traces back to that day. But behind the curtain, he was deteriorating. The Zen calm was pain management. The confidence was defiance. He refused sympathy, refused transparency, refused to surrender control, until control surrendered him. 2011, Steve Jobs dies at 56. Apple becomes a trillion-dollar ghost ship sailing on his blueprint. And humanity enters a new age, one where we stare at glass rectangles more than each other's faces. He changed the way humans connect. He also made sure they never truly would again. That's the paradox of genius. He wanted to empower individuals, but built systems that enslaved their focus. He wanted to elevate design, but built desires that can't be satisfied. He wanted to change the world, and he did, just not in the way he imagined. Congratulations, Steve. You made thinking obsolete and scrolling all anyone does at the dinner table. He once said, "The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." And he was right, but he forgot the sequel. They're also the ones who break it first. Okay, that's enough enlightenment for one episode. So, Steve Jobs, a barefoot dropout who built temples out of aluminum and glass. He didn't just change technology, he rewired human behavior. He proved that perfectionism, when weaponized, can reshape entire civilizations, and that charisma, when unchecked, can build a trillion-dollar religion around rectangles. He made the world simpler, and somehow a lot stupider. But credit where it's due. He saw what others couldn't. He cared when others settled, and he turned design into destiny. He wasn't a genius because he built the future. He was a genius because he made you want it. And now, you're all staring at a story about him through the glowing screen he designed. Probably while ignoring someone sitting right next to you. I guess in the end, Steve Jobs didn't just invent the iPhone. He invented the modern human condition. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to stare at my glowing rectangle and not have a human interaction until the next episode.